Now, we're finishing up tonight with a very special interview, quite a long interview, with Donal Creed, who served the community, the county, and indeed the nation in his various capacities as a member of Cork County Council, as a member of the Dáil for such a long time. He was elected to Dáil first in 1965 and remained there right up to 1989. Donal was also an MEP, of course, so his duties and his concerns went far beyond the shores of our island here. He was variously Minister of State for Health and Minister of State for Education. I remember at a personal level that it was Donal who was instrumental in bringing about the sports complex for Macroom inside the Castle Gate, and I think the people are always indebted to him for that during his time as Minister of State. Now, this programme was conducted some time ago by Breed McSwiney. I'm sure you'll enjoy listening to Donal.
Tá mí an sánacht I códrum Macroma chun labhairt le duine anna speisialta fad. Donal Creed, former councillor, TD, junior minister and MEP. Fáilte, and thank you very much for talking to us. Now, Donal, you grew up in Carrigafuca outside Macroom, born in 1924. What are your earliest school memories and farming memories in those days?
It's funny, I can remember 1932 going to school in very poor circumstances. We went to school most of the year barefoot. We travelled 3 miles on foot. We did a number of roads, crossed a number of fields, and we went over a dangerous timber bridge across the Fahurish River. Now, what I remember about that time is I thought everybody was poor, you know. It was particularly farmers. And the fact that my father he was a poor farmer anyway, but he got very much involved in politics to the time of the Blue Shirts. And it was during the economic war, and you couldn't sell. All you'd see in placards is burn everything British but their coal. And I think, you know, we lost the British market at that stage because of our attitude to it. Now, I'll give you an example of how bad the times are, particularly with farmers, as I've said. Calf, say for example, at this time of year now, or in the spring, they would be a great substitute for an income until the milk check arrived. At that time, you couldn't sell a calf because you could sell them all right for maybe a shilling or 2 shillings. But it had an effect on all of us. And I have very unhappy memories of my school days at that particular time.
What was Macroom like as a town in those days? Was it prosperous? Was there employment?
Macroom was, well, you didn't have the population that you have there now. You definitely didn't have the marts. You had 2 fairs in Macroom. One in the square of a Tuesday. You may have 100 cattle there for sale, maybe sheep, maybe pigs, and the square, the residents were complaining about the dirt that was after the fair, and the second Tuesday in the month was in Masseytown Fairfield. Now, that is built on, their houses in that field now, and Macroom was, it was a small, poor town at that particular stage. It has prospered since, I must say, and if it had a bypass, it would prosper faster.
Now, you say your father was always interested in politics. Was it a natural progression for you to go into politics as well? Were you interested as a young man, Or how did it come about that you entered politics first day?
Well, it wasn't a natural progression, I must say, because at that particular stage, my father, in 1950, was selected as a candidate for Cork County Council. Now, he did the campaign on the Bandon electoral area on a bicycle. Now, I can remember, you asked me, was it a natural progression? It wasn't, because at that particular stage, even when he was a candidate in the council, I don't think any of the family had that much interest. Certainly not my mother, God rest them all now. And there was 5 in family there, 3 girls and 2 boys. And I don't believe that anyone, until the day of the count, John and I went into the count. My father didn't go at all because he was afraid he wouldn't get elected, you see, and he didn't want. It was a fairly bitter fought election now. A bit of the civil war about it. We didn't have any councillor in the Bandon electoral area, in the 7-seater electoral area at the time. You had Farmer, you had Independents, and you had a mix from Gathram, you had Labour, you had Fianna Fáil, they had 4. And anyway, we went into the count, and we didn't have a telephone in Carrigafuca, as mostly any house didn't have it in a rural area at that stage. And it's funny now when you think of it. We went into the count, and we cycled home to tell him he was getting that he would probably hit the poll, which he did. And it was the surprise of our life. There was a big reception in Macroom when he arrived in on his bicycle. Oh no, sorry, he was dropped home by taxi at the same time that day.
So how did you become elected first day to the council?
Well, he got killed on the end of March, at the end of the year 1964. No, it was the end of 1963 he got killed. In an accident here in this house, actually. We were repairing the house, and anyway, I won't go into the details of his accidental death now. He got hurt, seriously hurt. He was removed into hospital, and he died. He was buried on the 8th of December 1963. Then it was a question of who'd fill the vacancy. There was very poor organisation as far as Fine Gael were concerned in the Bandon electoral area, and indeed in the whole constituency there wasn't a very active organisation there. But anyway, I was here, and Madeleine had just opened a shop in Inchigeela. I was delivering milk to the 2 hospitals in Macroom. I was starting to build up a herd, and my first interest is farming, and in fact I go and count John Keller's. I go walk through them every day. John Keller has the place now for me here. I have that interest in cattle that I would dearly love to be back 50 years again. And I don't think, no, it was an experience, so I can't say that I wouldn't do what I did. But anyway, I went into the Cork County Council, as I've said, on the 17th of the 3rd, 1964. I was co-opted. And, I thought it was such a strange place. And I was, even though my father had experience years of it, he fought 3 county council elections and headed the poll in the 3 of them. Now, on the other hand, he died he was buried in the 8th of December 1963. There was a bit of truing and froing then as to who would fill the seat. Now, it was either John or myself. John obviously didn't want it. He was newly married. He didn't want it. He kept saying to me to take it, and I was betwixt and between whether I take it or not. But Father Ixon was in Macroom at the time, and Father Ixon came up to me. I came here one evening. I was digging potatoes with horse and plough, and Claire was only a baby, or a child at the time. I had her by the hand. She was picking the potatoes, and I saw the priest come in, I was saying, good God, what's this? And he said to me, Donal, he said, I'm here on a special mission. And he said, it is the view of some of my friends that you should take the seat in the council. And he said, there'll be an election next year. And if you can't combine the two, your farming and the council, then get out altogether. You know, and I came in and I discussed it with Madeleine, and Madeleine was more for it than I was, I must say. And I decided I'd leave my name and go forward. So I went into the council meeting, I was notified, I was the unanimous selection of the council, and that was it.
And how many more councillors were there at that time?
There was, to the 48 members, there was 47 more beside myself.
And are any of them alive today?
I don't think so. I'm the only one, I would say.
Now, was the county hall a different place in those days?
It was, and as far as that, but it was catering for the needs of the population, but at that particular stage, because like Macroom town, you know, there was no such thing as new houses or anything like that. There was an odd new house. The council wouldn't have the housing schemes that they have now, and I maintain that you know it has changed radically. Because the year Michael was mayor, I was in there the morning he took it, or morning that he took it on, and you know the manager showed me all over the place, and I must say it was a completely, but and it's necessary. I mean the whole thing have expanded beyond all bounds.
And the funding was different.
The funding was different, and my complaint always was that the council collected motor taxation. I don't know what they're doing now, but the council collected motor taxation. They sent the thousands of pounds or euros to Dublin to the Department of Finance, and then they got back in grants. Now, I thought it would be much better system if the grants were done away with and the council allowed to keep the money that was raised in Cork.
Now, then in 1965 you were elected to Dáil, and that must have been a huge moment in your life.
Well, it was, and a surprise, I'll tell you. Sitting where we are now, as I said, Madeleine had a phone in Tregeela. Liam Cosgrave rang her in Tregeela. However he found out to know could they talk to me. I was outside in the yard mixing concrete on my own, and she came home to tell me that Liam Cosgrave and Tom O'Higgins they were coming down to talk to me. And I said, "Jeez, 'tis not the by-election. Dan Desmond had died. Lord mercy him." And I said, "'Tis not about the by-election they're talking to me, surely." Because it was beyond my wildest dreams. I'll tell you now, I thought I'd be incapable in the first place. Anyway, the two of them sat there. Liam Cosgrave sat here, there, and Tom Higgins sat here, and they had a drink. And who should arrive then but John from Carrickfergus, not knowing anything about the pressure. So John went outside the door, and he said, he said, "What the hell do they want?" So I said, "They're asking for me to stand in the by-election." So I made up my mind there and then that I would. That I'd give it a go. And I'll tell you something. I wasn't a month in the campaign when I was sorry I did. I'll tell you a funny thing about it, the aftermath meetings again. There's a famous telegraph pole outside the church in Inishannon. Remember now, it was a 4-seat constituency.
Who were your other colleagues in those days?
Fleur Crowley, Tom Meany, and Paddy Ford. Paddy Ford's dead too. And anyway, Dinny Owen and myself went down to Inishannon. And it was 8 o'clock mass. It was a cold, frosty morning of the first week in April, or the last week in March. There was a pier there, and there's a telegraph pole that you'd have to go up in a wall to get onto the pier, and you had a ready-made stand there for your speech. And I had my hand on the pole, and then he only introduced me from the ground. The only bloody thing that stood still was the telegraph pole. They all passed me by. But I went from there down to Oh, Ballygarvan, and from Ballygarvan to Douglas, and from Douglas to Blackrock, and the Lord of Mercy and the dead again. They're all dead, and it's kind of John Birmingham was the fellow that introduced me there, and like my father in Newcestown, he said, "Would you like a cup of tea?" And I said, "I would love it." So I went home, and I came in here home after, and I said to herself, "We're having the dinner," and I said to herself, says I think I won't go. I think I'll pull out. But
Donal, you were in politics for 26 years and you never lost an election. That's a huge achievement. Have you any particular reason for your success?
Well, I was thinking today before, because I knew this interview was coming up, there was always great harmony between the Fine Gael TDs here. And I think I played my role. My running mates now were the Lord of Mercy, they're all dead now, except for one. Pat Lombard, Sean O'Leary, the
Former
High
Lord
Court
Mayor,
Judge, Dan O'Leary, Phil Burton, and Frank Crowley, who's still living. Now, we were regarded as the only two TDs that would be in cooperation with one another in the Dáil at the time. That the other TDs, maybe it is different now.
You divided the constituency.
We divided the constituency, and we got on well. And as a result, we increased our strength. Frank got elected to the Dáil. And you asked me how did I? Well, I lost the by-election now. I lost the by-election, but on the night that we were proposing the vote of thanks to the returning officers and staff in Bandon, Lemass was dissolving the Dáil because Eileen Desmond won the election, and it was obvious that she was going to win from the start anyway. And I was back in a campaign again after the torturous campaign of a by-election. Because you're dragged all over the constituency. You can't divide it and say that's looked after by.
That's right.
You're the only candidate.
The only candidate.
Yeah.
It's all up to you.
Yeah.
Then you were a junior minister, Donal. What portfolio did you have as a junior minister?
Well, I had three actually. I was appointed junior minister to local government in the early 80s. But you had three elections in the early 80s. I was appointed minister for parliamentary secretary, Minister of State it was at that stage, local government. And I wasn't happy there, I must say. And then there was another election. And I was appointed Minister of State to Eileen Desmond, who was Minister for Health. So then there was an election. And I don't know whether or not, but it looks like when Jimmy Hussey was appointed Minister for Education, that she looked for somebody that would do the donkey work. Now, in fairness to her, I had specific responsibilities. She never interfered with me. Never interfered with me, even though she was critical of me when I went to Los Angeles for the Olympic Games in 1984. Now, I had responsibility for the Gaeltacht area, building of schools, school transport, handicapped children, what else? School transport. The school transport was the biggest issue at the time because transport was new and everybody thought that, that their child should have, and I often reminded parents of my own term in school, how I walked 3 miles to school, and that I didn't have any bus. Anyway, I enjoyed I had great staff, I had wonderful staff, I had my freedom to make decisions, and I did. And do you know what? Anybody that would say that we have a dictatorial civil service, they are wrong, completely wrong. Okay, they'd put you in the picture, they'd say it is your, they'd tell you what the file looked like, and they'd put it over to you now, Minister. And that's the only thing I got. I had wonderful staff.
Donal, you were an MEP in 1973.
I was.
So you were an MEP, TD, councillor, father, farmer, all at the same time. How is that possible?
Well, it wasn't actually. But I'll tell you, I was on it's the Council of Ministers makes the decisions in the European Parliament. Mark Clinton was the Minister for Agriculture here. a good minister, but a cranky individual. Now, I was on the Agricultural Committee of the European Parliament and on the Environmental Committee. Now, I'd go to meetings on a Monday morning. They'd be mostly there. Sorry, I'd go to council meeting on Monday morning, and maybe sometime during the week there might be a meeting of the Council of Ministers of the Agricultural Committee, and I'd be notified, and I'd go. Now, what were the problems in the European Parliament? They were wide and varied, but I believe myself that, you see, at this particular stage, it was the Oireachtas nominated the members. Now, at this particular stage, I felt I wasn't giving enough to the European Parliament, so it had to take second place. I felt my favourite one of the three of them was the Cork County Council. Now, okay, I liked the Dáil and I liked my ministry, and I neglected Cork County Council when I had the minister, particularly Minister of State of Education.
So you think it's a good idea that the dual mandate's in place, that it's one or the other now, that you focus on being a councillor or a TD, that you can't do both? Well,
I don't know would I go that far, really, because I know that it is lunacy to think that you'd be member of the Dáil or the member of the Loch and be in the European Parliament at the same time. The European Parliament is a full-time job.
What were the big issues when you were there in 1973?
Well, the issues, as far as I was concerned, was the price, the WTO, the World Trade Organization, particularly with price of farm produce and that kind of thing. And then there were other things on the environment. I don't know whether you remember the asbestos factory, Rebestos Manhattan in Ovens. Now, I brought that up, and the officials there called me back to ask me, was it possible that an asbestos factory would go within 3 kilometres of a village, Ballincollig, at the time? And I said, well, it was 4 the most. And this was crazy. Now, that was before the people, and I can remember, I took up the cudgels with the committee at the time that opposed it. There was Dr. O'Neill, he's dead now too, from the Mercy Hospital. He was the leader, and we had meetings after meetings. I pursued it, and I made myself very unpopular with the officials of Cork County Council, and I pursued it to the best of my advantage, at the best of my ability, and I put it to a vote anyway, and it was defeated by 13 votes to 11. Now, at that particular stage, nobody knew anything about it, but the manager said that he had an assurance from the experts. There was the secretary of the committee was a girl by the name of Mrs. Cubitt, and he said in a statement in Cork, at a meeting in Cork, that Rosemary Cubitt could sleep naked at the exit pipe, and that there was no damage, that she was guaranteed. Rebestos Manhattan went, and when all the furore started in the army with the asbestos, and it was. I mean, everybody accepts now that asbestos is dangerous.
Life-threatening, even.
Life-threatening is right.
Donal, you were credited with being the instigator of the National Lottery. How did that come about?
It came about, Breda, because of I was always interested in sport, and most Irish people are. I went to a meeting within 2 months of I being appointed minister. But my secretary, Conhock, had showed me the file, which was there, and I went to the NACA meeting, annual general meeting in Portlaoise. There was a big crowd there, and the question was, what was the minister's attitude to the lottery, national lottery? The sports lottery, it was known as that time. And I answered the question. I said, I've read the file, and I was impressed with it. I heard a giggle down the hall, and I was told that was the attitude of 3 of your predecessors, namely Michael Keating, Jimmy Tunney, and Maura Gagan Quinn. Now, the GA were opposed to it. The party, Fine Gael party, were opposed to it because of the fact that it sounded the death knell of the hospital street trek. And Paddy McGrath, who was in the Senate at the time, was the man who financed the Fine Gael party and the Cumann Gael party almost on its own, almost completely on its own. And I was accused at that particular stage, and I'm delighted to have the opportunity of saying it up with some of my own that came into my office in a temper and said, did I realise that I was biting the hand that fed the party? And would I ever... You'd be surprised now within the party who, but I can't name them now. And there was this... in fact, it was brought up at a party meeting. Anyway, I'm not saying the greatest I am, but I went to the Olympic Games in Los Angeles. I was all the time saying that that kids that get involved in sport, they're never involved in any antisocial behaviour. But the problem with the sporting facilities wasn't there. Now, before long, we carried out between Sport, the National Sports Council, and the Guards a survey in Dublin. And they found that 85% of the people involved in sport were never involved in any, the children now I'm talking about, were never involved in any kind of antisocial behaviour. So that drove me further. So anyway, I used to tend, God, it was agony to convince my own party, to convince the government. Anyway, I told Alan Dukes, who was Minister for Finance, that I'd have to resign my ministry, except because I'd given my word to the NACA, and there was another sporting organisations, and my purpose was to bring the two organisations together and make one national sporting organisation and have the lottery there as a sports lottery. Now, this was all pie in the sky. But I went to Alan Dukes and I said I'd have to retire because I gave my word, and my word is my bond. And I said to him, I'd retire except something happened in the lottery. Now, it takes a fair bit of time to get through a bill in the Dáil. I used to go to the annual dinner of Cork City Sports every year. And there was a fellow there, Chairman, Colonel Heffernan. And he used to say, when introducing me at the end to speak, you say, we'll now have a word from the man who promised us the national lottery, and the sports lottery, but there's no account of it. Maybe it is lost. But I had great satisfaction. In the last dinner that I attended, I mentioned him by name, and I said to him I was glad to say that the government had accepted my proposal, but it would be a national lottery with 33% going to sport. Now, that was Jimmy Tunney, and he was a personal friend of mine, called me going out. He was last town corner at the Dáil, and he called me going out of the Dáil chamber, and it was after a vote, and he called me and he said, Donal, I'm advising you this. I'm older than you, and he wasn't, but he said, I'm advising you this. You will destroy the Fine Gael party. You will destroy the GA. Now, you had people like, you had very worthy national lotteries, from the Mater Hospital, the Kishton the Bonbon, the Cork General Aftercare, who put a lot of pressure on me. And he said, how is it, he said, that Michael Keating didn't do it? How is it that Mara Geoghegan Quinn didn't do it? And I was forced not to do it because the GA would now, Undermayham got very sore with me, by the way. And I kind of, he was doing work that the state should be doing. And 'tis hard to imagine that you undermine him in that work, do you know? But the Cork General Aftercarers that are now Cope, they're benefiting him much more than they're...
Hugely.
Yeah, absolutely. But the only man who came up to me and said to me about Charlie High said, do you know, Donal, he said, your lottery would pay the national debt.
Not quite, I'd say.
No,
Are there any other high points in your career in the Dáil in particular?
well, you know, I had some low points too. I had a few things that I wanted done that I couldn't get done, and you know, The one thing I did was I did all my work in the west of Ireland, which was neglected. And I remember there was a deputation in the gallery one night from Donal rat down about a school that was to be built out there. And when I stood up, it was booed from the gallery, and the Count Corley, who was Cormac Breslin at the time, he insisted that the gallery should be cleared, said the minister. But I didn't mind that, and they had a justifiable case. But Dublin was getting all the money for school buildings, and I mean, I built schools from Donegal and opened them from Donegal to the South Kerry, to Kinmare. I built 2 schools in Kinmare, would you believe it? And they were thrilled. Jurlot Nan came here to that door to thank me for a school and they were going to picket me at another school, but the bishop advised them not to, but we talked to him first.
You were obviously a man of the people if you succeeded in so many elections. Why is local government so dear to your heart?
Well, I'll tell you the year I was chairman of Cork County Council. It was the year of the tragedy in Bantry. What's the name? The Belted Jesus.
The Belted Jesus, yeah.
That, I was chairman that year. Sean Hayes was the manager. And Liam Mulvihill was the solicitor. We went to see the French deputation from the French government to Bantry to bail out and it was tragic. Now, I had to make decisions there and then as to whether or not I would continue to be involved in a committee, and that would look after the parents and the relatives of the people that got killed. And I refused because I wouldn't be able to give it enough time. Now, the year I was chairman of Cork County Council, Cork local authority is the work that they do is very close to my heart. I mean, roads, potholes. Now, you don't hear houses, other things as well that I can't come to mind now. But I still maintain, and I still maintain it's an asset to be a member of the Dáil and a member of the council, because you can take problems from the council to the Dáil. Now, like the one while ago I told you about the taxation, motor taxation. Now you can take that to the Dáil and you can use it in maybe speeches. It might be a long hard road, but you feel you're constantly involved,
And looking back over it all now, Donal, what do you think were your greatest achievements?
Well, I would think, and the National Lottery would jump to my mind, but I would think that wasn't my greatest achievement. I think the National Lottery, yes. What my greatest achievement gave me greater satisfaction. When I became minister and in charge of the disabled children, you had a bus leaving Castletown Bear, coming through Macroom, bringing about a dozen children, taking them into Douglas to a school for the handicapped. They were left there until the following Saturday. They were brought home again by bus, and the parents were kicking up around, and I had a deputation here of parents of handicapped children from Bandon. Now, I had a discussion with the secretary of the department, and he was Lane at the time anyway. But I got the handicapped children educated with their peers in the local national schools, and that gave joy to my heart.
Yeah.
And it was a real achievement. Now, the National Lottery there was a lot more work in the National Lottery, and a lot more hardship in it, and a lot more abuse. And I'm glad it's going well anyway.
Yeah, and the amount of people who've benefited from it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Donal, were you instrumental in the opening of many schools in the local area?
Well, I opened one in Killimartra, I opened one in Macroom. I opened one in Canavy. And I'll never forget the Canavy one because it was, we went up in a helicopter to Dublin. President Reagan was visiting the Dáil that day from America, and you couldn't get a pair. So I asked Father Sullivan, I rang him, and could he delay the Mass of the ceremony, and because Julie did it, and I arrived in the door just as Mass was over, panting.
Well, you probably couldn't have done what you have done without huge family support. Do you think that's...
Well, as you mentioned that, I'd give a lot of credit to my wife. She reared my children, or our children. Now, I have 23 grandchildren, and I'd say I have every one of the 23 of them spoiled. And and they say if you haven't been around to rear your children, that you'll take it out on the grandchildren. Well, that's
making up for lost time.
Yes, that is absolutely correct.
So here to ask you, Donal, what age you are at this stage?
Of course, it's fair. I've celebrated my 84th birthday a month ago, and I'm in my 85th year.
Well,
thanks be to God.
Gur Father Boon too and Ganairi and Tálat Tucky.
Go ahead, Margaret.